Pakistan, which needs a bit of help. Its economy is hamstrung by the failure of successive governments to really get to grips with the lack of infrastructure. And with a population fast approaching 200 million, Pakistan's economy is losing up to 6% of GDP just because of a lack of power and infrastructure bottlenecks. So, step forward, Beijing, with its $46 billion One Belt, One Road project to connect inner China with the Middle East and Europe. $33 billion worth of energy projects and coal-fired electricity plants, on almost $10 billion on road and rail projects. By contrast, the United States has spent $31 billion in Pakistan since 2002, with two-thirds going on security spending. Now, China itself will do well out of this. Money will flow through Chinese banks into Chinese companies. They'll employ Chinese workers, just what China needs to stimulate growth. But obviously, Pakistan is a big winner too. Nicole Johnston has this from Islamabad.
High in the Karakoram Mountains, close to the border of China and Pakistan, China is expanding the world's highest international paved road, the Karakoram Highway, and expanding its influence. This is part of a $43 billion project called the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor. It will stretch from Kashgar in China's Xinjiang province all the way south through Pakistan to the port city of Gwadar.
When the China-Pakistan corridor becomes operational, China would be directly connected to the Middle East or the Gulf states and to Africa. And this would be a big dividend accruing directly from the corridor.
Construction has started on a Chinese-funded deep-sea port in Gwadar. It will cut the time it takes for goods and oil to reach China from the Middle East from 12 days to 36 hours. And there are all sorts of deals linked to it: coal, solar and wind power, oil and gas pipelines, highways and railways. This is one of the most impressive buildings in Islamabad, a $30 million convention centre paid for by China. The two countries have a long-tested relationship, one that's based on cultural, economic and strong military ties. China is Pakistan's biggest supplier of weapons. It helped develop its latest jet fighter, the JF-17 Thunder.
Pakistan is a country that has been plagued by problems from all around. Unless we rise on our own feet, we really cannot depend on others. China has been far more trustworthy, is a much more reliable friend of Pakistan, and I think that is known universally.
The China-Pakistan Economic Corridor revives the old Silk Road traders used centuries ago. A nod to the past, while developing new industries for the future.
Well, Asad Ali's with us now from London to talk about all this. He is an analyst with IHS Global Insight. Nice to have you with us, Asad. I mean, this is just great for Pakistan, isn't it? Not a country which that many people would think about going to invest in, and it gets access to China's billions now.
Yeah, I mean, it's worked out really well for Pakistan and for Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif. He's been looking for foreign investment into Pakistan's energy sector since he came into 2013, but the poor security situation in Pakistan has meant that mainly Western investors and Western countries have not really been prepared to invest in the sector. So this is a very much needed boost for it.
So why China? Is it that just, you know, the idea that it seems to be that China goes to places others don't, particularly the Western countries?
Well, I mean, China's interest in Pakistan is very specific. So China's got this wider, broader Silk Road project going on. Pakistan is one of the big parts of it. Now, specifically, the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, which the investment has been made in, is going to give access to China access to the Arabian Sea and, of course, all of the lucrative oil routes coming out of the Middle East. It's going to shorten transportation times, especially to Pakistan, to China's western region.
Tell me about what Pakistan gets out of all this. So obviously they get the infrastructure and the things which will improve their country and their quality of life. But, you know, a lot of the work is going to go to Chinese workers. It's going to go through Chinese banks and Chinese companies. I wonder where the end product comes for your average Pakistani worker.
Well, for Pakistanis will be involved in the project, but if you look at it in terms of the energy crisis in Pakistan, that's the biggest concern for Pakistanis. I mean, Pakistan's got obviously a very it's been problems with militancy are very high on the agenda. But if you ask the average Pakistani, the most pressing concern for them is energy shortages. And if this project can, boost long-term prospects or even short-term prospects for better energy generation, then that's going to be a massive plus for the average Pakistani.
I don't like saying this, but as you describe an economy like that, you start to wonder how it's actually functioned all this time, because so many things seem to be working against it.
Yeah, I mean, Pakistan has shown, some resilience. It grew. The economy itself grew quite a bit under Musharraf's time. So there is hope for it to progress further. But the fundamental of the energy shortage has to be fixed for for Pakistan to reach its real potential.
So, Asad, let's go back to the core of this issue, the China-Pakistan relationship. They talk about being all-weather friends, but you go back to the last time Pakistan needed some money and didn't want to go to the IMF. China didn't exactly have the handout. I wonder how strong their bond is, or is it just something that suits what China wants to do now and what Pakistan needs now?
Well, I mean, there is obviously a lot of truth in that, but if you look at the foundations of the alliance between China and Pakistan, there is a lot of reason for the relationship to be very strong. When China was isolated, Pakistan acted as a mediator between it and the West. And if you're looking at the investments now, yes, China has its own concerns. China has strong interest in having a very stable Pakistan. China has its own Islamist militancy in its western region, and obviously helping Pakistan will hopefully stop any support that Pakistani militants have in supporting the militants in China. But on the other hand, bringing prosperity to the Western regions is a big part of the Chinese leadership's plans in trying to quell the insurgency there as well.
What about the other relationship Pakistan has?
So China has it all.
Other relationships Pakistan has, for example, the United States. That is a contentious one at best. But the US has pumped about $30 billion into Pakistan. Where did that money go? Was that mostly military spending? Or?
So yeah, that was predominantly military spending. More recently, America has tried to target their aid towards more commercial and civilian government ventures, but predominantly the aid has been towards the military. Now, the difference between what the Americans have done in the past and what the Chinese are doing now is that these investments are very specific. They're being made specifically towards the infrastructure and energy sectors. So this is a very notable different strategy being taken up by the Chinese, which I think is much more prudent in the sense that it bypasses a lot of the leadership, the military leadership, and to some extent the civilian leadership as well, that that in the past have been accused of using up the funds for not what they were meant for.
Asad Ali talking Pakistan with us this week on Counting the Cost. Asad, thank you for your time.